Summertime is the best time to read a Victorian novel. And that is just my opinion, but it's also an opinion that I feel very strongly about, and I feel very strongly about it in the way that I feel I'm right about it. Okay, walk with me here. It's a gorgeous, hot, sunny day. You're drinking in the heat. You have an iced latte next to you. Maybe you're at the beach. What is the perfect thing to accompany you on that day? A book where the authors were very obviously paid by the word, because why are they using that many words? Victorian novels get such a bad rap. They're always described as boring or dry or dense and gloomy. And can they be all of those things? Yes. But they can also be the most riveting, jaw-dropping, intense, melodramatic novels. Like, some of these books are some of the most intense books I've ever read. There's something even more exciting about it because it's all hidden behind the veneer of Victorian propriety. You feel like you're in on a joke, which I really appreciate, because I honestly never feel like I'm in on the joke. I have the polarizing view of either feeling like I'm so far outside of the joke to not even be considered, but also sometimes I think I am the joke, which is a conversation for a different time. I feel like Victorian novels just get associated with the winter because of A Christmas Carol, and honestly, why are we giving Charles Dickens that much power? So here are some books that I believe make for perfect summer reading. Is it light summer reading? No. Is it fun summer reading? It can be. Anyways, without much further ado, here are the Victorian books that I absolutely love and adore and will defend as not boring and not dry. First up on this list, I know Charles Dickens caught some strays earlier, and honestly that was completely intentional. I'm not a huge fan of Charles Dickens. His work is very theatrical in a way that I just don't take seriously, and I love the theater. I played Willy Wonka in my grade 4 play. I think I mentioned this like 2 videos ago. I'm really proud of it, okay? It was probably my peak. But this book I do have to mention as one of my favorite Victorian books, not only because I really loved reading it, but also because it inspired my favorite YA series of all time, The Infernal Devices. And that book is A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, but these times were mostly the best. I had a great time reading this book. So this novel very loosely inspired what then went on to become one of the greatest love stories and love triangles ever created in the history of literature, which is the love triangle between Will Herondale, Tessa Virtue, what the fuck? Not Tessa Virtue, which is the love triangle between Will Herondale, Tessa Gray, and Jem Carstairs. So in this book, we follow two men. One is an exiled French aristocrat, and one is an English lawyer who is disreputable but brilliant and believes there is no hope for him. And they both fall in love with the same girl, and it's a very melodramatic, intense story with love and political intrigue and tragedy and so much to discover. I actually initially read this for a school project in grade 12 where we had to pick a book. It could be any book, but the teacher specifically stipulated that it could not be YA because he had a real grudge against YA, and me as a big fan and champion of YA, I was a little put off by that. So my loophole, my little workaround was like, okay, I'm gonna pick a classic book that inspired the greatest YA series ever written. And I picked A Tale of Two Cities. Absolutely fell head over heels in love with Sydney Carton. I recently found the assignment that I had to do for school on this book, and I was just drooling over that man on the page. Like, it's a little embarrassing, honestly. I sobbed reading this book. I was so invested in the lives of these characters. I initially went in just because it inspired The Infernal Devices, but then I grew to love these characters in their own right, especially Sydney Carton. I think he's one of my favorite tragic heroes. I don't really tend to like the men in classic literature. Like, they're all a little off-putting, but Sydney Carton, that was my man, and I stand by him, so no need to concern Tammy Wynette. I remember I was really stressed about grade 12 math because I was terrible at it, and I was crying in the halls, and then I pulled out this book and I finished it, and it just distracted me from the horror that is grade 12 advanced functions. So that is the power this book has. But honestly, if you're looking for melodrama, if you're looking for a really compelling love story, if you're looking for just some of the most beautiful declarations of love you have ever read, read this book. It takes place at a time when there's so much unsettling, but there's also this intense, true, deep love that runs right through the core of this. So it's really beautiful and it's really intense, and you will be subsumed by it. So Not a dull moment to be found. Well, there's probably some dull moments. It is a Victorian novel, but on the whole, it's a good one. Next, we have a book that I actually just read this year, and it took me forever to get to it. People for ages I have known have loved this book. It's The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde is a genius. Anytime I am in a situation in life and an aphorism comes to my mind, I'm like, who said that? Oh, it was Oscar Wilde. He was so intelligent in such a witty, quick way that I just look upon with amazement. I do not possess quick-wittedness in any sense of the word. I get too anxious. I'm like, well, how are people going to perceive what I say? And then the moments pass. So I really respect that from him. But The Picture of Dorian Gray, we essentially follow this young man named Dorian Gray who's very physically attractive, and one day he has his portrait taken and he makes this wish that he will never age but the portrait will age, and the wish comes true. But it's be careful what you wish for, because as Dorian changes and ages but remains the same on the outside, his portrait still changes to show the qualities that he is taking on as he becomes more morally corrupt, and it's a little horrifying. It's got this amazing blend of all these different genres. It's just such an interesting book. It's also short. I know it doesn't look like it, but for a Victorian novel, this is like a novella. I read this in like a day because I had to. I was on a bit of a time crunch for school. It was just so quick, but also so dense. There's so much in here. There's so many famous like zingers and one-liners in this book. I don't know how he did it. Like, how do you pack so many aphorisms into one 200-page book? I don't know. But also like really get to the core and the heart of so many issues. This book made me rethink my entire relationship to art and my entire understanding of life, and how I understand art through life and how I understand life through art. And it was just such a like thing to wrap my mind around, but at the same time it's a really fun, gripping, intense story that you can't put down. I think it's perfect. It's one of those books you read and you are amazed that one person could have so much genius and intellect and ability to express and articulate their ideas in order to author such a novel. Like, it's crazy. Cuckoo bananas, honestly. I am in awe of Oscar Wilde. That's how you know it's truly something enjoyable, is when you enjoy studying it, because sometimes I read something for school and I'm like, oh, I would love if I didn't have to read this for school, because I think I'd actually really enjoy it if I wasn't told I needed to read it. But this one is really great and I would really recommend it, especially if you're looking for something quick. Okay, and next up on this list we have a book that is definitely read at your own risk. It is not for the faint of heart. It is one of the most tragic, horrifying books I have ever read, and it's a book that I'm honestly like always a little bit embarrassed to say is one of my favorite books because of just how messed up it is. It pretty much altogether ended this writer's career in terms of writing novels. He never wrote another novel after this. What an introduction. That book is... oh, that was anticlimactic. That book is Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy. This book, I don't even know how to describe the plot, besides just unrelenting pain. In this book, we essentially follow a young man named Jude from the time of childhood to his adulthood. He has always had this dream of becoming educated, and so he really longs to go to this city of Christminster, which is basically Oxford, and get a university education and degree, but he is constantly thwarted by classism and elitism, and it's really just all about the way this social environment that Jude lives in is constantly working against all of the characters who are just trying to live in accord with their own desires rather than their own desire to survive in this world. This book never offers a singular break for either Jude or you as the reader, because you're forced to sit there and read it. The whole book is just like, ugh, like it's not fun to read. The characters are some of the most complex, intricate, confounding, and frustrating characters I have ever read about. You read them and you're like, what are you doing? Stop it. But you know you can't stop it, and you also know that they can't stop it because it's just who they are. So it's just a very powerless feeling altogether. This book also just has some of the most gorgeous passages. Thomas Hardy is a really great writer. I mean, I also really love Tess of the D'Urbervilles and The Return of the Native are the other two Thomas Hardy books I've read. I started Far from the Madding Crowd last summer and I didn't finish it because it wasn't what I was in the mood for. I know I just said Victorian, summer's the time for Victorian novels. Last summer I was not feeling it. The exception proves the rule sometimes. Unlike Charles Dickens, I actually tolerate the way Thomas Hardy writes women. He writes really interesting, dynamic, multifaceted women. Some men today are not writing women as complex individuals, so let's talk about that, shall we? Let's open up the case. I've had to read this 3 times. The first time I read this book was when I was 18. It was during COVID. A horrible decision to make. And immediately after finishing it, I got so sick, like physically. I felt physically nauseous after reading this, and then that later turned into my first ever migraine. So this book did give me a migraine. Let's talk about this. My mom told me that if I were born as a boy, I would have been named Jude, after him. And then she was like, oh, but don't ever read it. Like it's horrifying. It's so depressing. So then when I was 18, the extent to my teenage rebellion was to pick up a Victorian novel that my mom told me not to read. It's one of those books that you read where the thing that everybody talks about happens and you're like, I never would have thought that's what it could possibly be. I was like, how could anybody think up of something like this? Like, how could somebody conceive of this story? But someone did. I have read it 2 more times after that for school. The second time I had to read it, I sat and I blew through the first half in one sitting. I was just so invested. I think it's still, even though it's depressing, unrelenting, horrifying, it's a page turner like no other. When I finished it the first time and I got that migraine, I was like, I'm never touching that book again. I'm not talking about it. I'm not doing anything with that book. And now here I am 6 years later. So, you know, definitely read at your own risk, but I think it's still beautifully written and it's a lot. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say on that. Next up, we have a girl that I think is underrated. Nobody ever talks about her, and I really loved this book when I read it. I think it was the first book I read for a class that was on the Victorian novel. I am talking about Mary Barton by Elizabeth Gaskell. At its face value, it is a story about classism and class during the Industrial Revolution. So it does contain a lot of important social commentary on the way the Industrial Revolution created such a stratified society. But we follow a girl named Mary Barton who catches the eye of the mill owner's son, and then a murder takes place and she gets caught up in it. I'm gonna say this word and sound like an 80-year-old woman, but I don't care. 80-year-old women are iconic. She was like a plucky young heroine. Like, I really enjoyed following her. The murder plot kind of took me off guard. Like, it's very dramatic and you have this hyper-realistic setting, but then at the same time there's this tale of adventure and love and a murder that really keeps you reading, and it's such a vivid story. I read it like 3 years ago and I still remember reading this and being like, I can't put this down, and being so invested in the love story, being so invested in the murder plot. There's just a lot going on. We don't talk about it, but I think we should talk about it a little bit more, and it's a little bit underrated. One of my favorite things about the Victorian era too is how long it is. It goes from like the 1830s to 1900. This is schooling, I need to know this. 1901. This is where they started, and these were the issues they started writing about, and then this was the end of the era. And it's really interesting to compare and contrast the things that they were outraged about and the way in which they chose to express that outrage, because it's very different. This one, I actually feel like it's a really moving, enticing, gripping story. So would definitely recommend this one. And how could it be a video where I talk about my favorite Victorian novels where I don't mention my girls, Charlotte Bronte and Emily Bronte? I only have Wuthering Heights. I think I read my mom's copy of Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre is like a classic coming of age novel. So if that's what you're looking for, pick up Jane Eyre. It's about a young girl. She grows up, she becomes a governess. It's about her finding herself. I felt so empowered reading this as a 13-year-old. I remember one time we had a school assignment a few months after I'd finished reading this book where we had to stand up and read a selected passage of anything of our choosing in front of the class. And at the time, I had been done dirty by a boy that I liked. Remember, I got up in front of the class and I read this passage from Jane Eyre where she's like, I choose myself. Sometimes I think my younger self had levels of self-esteem that I do not have access to. Like, where did they go? Where did she go? I need that back. Jane Eyre was a book I read and it really granted me with so much self-respect. I need to pick it up again. In light of recent events, I think I may need to pick up Jane Eyre again. This is one I do have to admit, I read it during Christmas time, so this is one that I do not associate with the summer. It's perennial. It's so great. Read it. And then of course we have this one, which has been very much so a very hot topic of discussion recently. This one I've read twice. I read it once when I was 15 and I was so swept up by it. Teenage girl reading Wuthering Heights, canon event. You can't deny it. I am like not original at all. And then when I was 21, I was in an anthropology seminar on intergenerational trauma, and we had to write a research paper on any piece of media that depicted intergenerational trauma. And so I selected Wuthering Heights. I reread it over my reading week as preparation, and I forgot how much I loved it. This is one of the most enthralling, this is melodrama right here. This is one of those books you read and you're like, we're not writing books like this anymore. Like, where is that intensity, that drama, that feeling, that like we're so apathetic right now, I feel like. And this book just sucks you right into just so much intense emotion and lingering on feelings of betrayal that you have not gotten over for like 20 years. Being so haunted by your past that it just comes to actually haunt you as a ghost. It's just so good. Is it gothic and dark and dense? Yes, but here's my thing. I don't think summer is light and breezy. Spring, yes. Summer, no. Summer is an intense, sweltering, all-consuming heat. And that is what this book is. You just need like a day when you're just like sun drunk and tired, and you just open up this book and you fall into the most intense, overwrought, but overwrought in a good way, okay? I'm not saying that as a diss, I'm saying that as a compliment. And it's one of these stories that just feels so big, but it really only takes place between like 4 people and 2 houses. Nobody asked, but since we're here, I will give my thoughts on the adaptation, because I did watch the adaptation with Jacob Elordi and Margot Robbie. I didn't like it. The whole second half of the book, which in my opinion is the best half of the book, I think the first half is overrated. The second half of the book is incredible. The whole second half of the book was gone. It wasn't there. You can't adapt the story of characters and then just neglect the whole second half of the story. I'm not a film critic. I know absolutely nothing about movies. I just know I wasn't a huge fan of that one, and I know other people also were not a huge fan of it, so I feel a little bit more comfortable stating that opinion. But Wuthering Heights, great novel. Jane Eyre, great novel. So those are some of my favorite Victorian books to get you reading this summer. Victorian girl summer. There's something about summer and the Victorian era that just go hand in hand. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Definitely let me know some of your favorite Victorian books, or just like let me know what you like to read in the summer. If not Victorian, let me know. It's probably literally anything else. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you very soon in my next one. Bye!